there guys, I'm going to be doing a movie review this evening. It's not going to be history related for once, but it is going to be one of my sort of pet favourite films, even though some people think it's absolute trash, to be honest. But I find it really intriguing, and it's a film that I watched when I was a little boy, and I thought it was brilliant when I first watched it. Obviously on repeated viewings it's probably not as good as other movies out there, but I'm going to go through my review of Stargate, which is a 1994 film directed by Roland Emmerich with some big stars in it. So you've got Kurt Russell plays the main character, James Spader plays the sort of archaeologist, professor type in this movie, and then you've got a Jay Davidson, who is at the time in the early 90s was a relatively new actor on the scene, and actually disappeared soon after this movie came out due to the amount of pressure that the film and fame was actually causing him. So yeah, I'm just going to go over a couple of things. So just to give you a brief summary of the movie. So what the movie is about is, if you've not seen it before, I would highly recommend that you watch this. Is in the 1920s, when after the archaeological craze was sweeping Egypt. So you just had Howard Carter had unearthed the tomb of Tutankhamun. You'd had various people in Egypt then really looking to sort of piece together what had gone on in the past. We had already deciphered the Rosetta Stone, so we could read the Egyptian languages and the hieroglyphics. You had, like very much in the Indiana Jones series, you had British archaeologists for the most part, French archaeologists, German archaeologists, Americans there as well, unearthing with these digs, really looking to see if they could pull some real treasures and pieces for their Egyptology exhibits, like it is in the British Museum, which is fantastic, and also, well, really should actually be returned to the National Museum in Cairo as well, which I'd love to go to one day. But anyways, so this movie in the 1920s, there is a dig, and what they unearth, it looks like a gateway. It had been buried on Earth for, it looks like, hundreds of years, maybe thousands of years. There are some hieroglyphs and some markings on there which were undecipherable. They didn't really know what the object was that they found. Fast forward then 70 years into the 1990s, you have a archaeologist played by James Spader, who is really a controversial figure, goes against the sort of the mainstream teachings of Egyptology, and that attracts the attention of a little girl who, or an old lady by this time, who was at the dig site. Her father was the archaeologist who found the Stargate in the 1920s in Egypt, and she's been working with the Department of Defense and the military, who now have the object in their possession to find out what this thing is, how it works. Is it a weapon? What is it? It's a technology that we don't understand. So they bring this. At the same time, you have a lieutenant colonel who is working with the U.S. Army, probably special ops or black operations. Unfortunately, his son had died. It looks like it's referred to in a gun incident where perhaps mistakenly a gun had gone off and taken his son's life, or perhaps the boy is quite young, so I'm assuming that's what happened. He gets involved and becomes really the sort of the project leader. What they think is going to happen is that this technology will open a gateway, and it does. They they find a way that it opens a gateway somewhere elsewhere in the cosmos, and they do for the sake of the purposes of the story. They go there, so they land on a planet way outside of the solar system, very similar, eerily similar to Egyptian hieroglyphs. You've got your pyramids, you've got your hieroglyphs everywhere, you've got your same type of setting in sort of Saharan Africa. The sort of expedition come across a group of people who they look, for all intents and purposes, very similar to Arabic people. They are they inform there is a medallion which the archaeologist carries, which has got the Eye of Ra, which is the sun god in the Egyptian mythos, and they bow to the sun god. So what you take away from that is that they're a very similar, if not an identical, sort of civilization. They are human as well, humanoid people on a different planet. For all intents and purposes, there's oxygen. That you've got different moons. So you've got the team split into two different camps. So you've got the archaeologist and the lieutenant colonel, played by Kurt Russell, goes with these people to find out who you are. Where are we? How do we get back? Is the main question. Whilst the majority of the team is really setting up a base really at the temple in which the other Stargate where they came through, that's where that's located. Whilst there's a ship comes down, again pyramid style, comes on top of the temple and absorbs in the special ops team that are left there trying to establish a base camp. They are taken captive. What it looks like, for intents and purposes, would be the Egyptian gods. So you've got Horus, Anubis, and I can't think of the other one, but it's the two ones which people are very familiar with. So the dog god, Anubis, guardian of the underworld, and Horus as well, who was in Egyptian folklore. Horus was one of the pharaohs and kings of Egypt as well. So you've got the team split into two. The human people on the planet tell of a ruler, which is Ra. He rules them. He asks them to mine a certain element. That's what they're doing. So their entire civilization is set up to mine a particular product from the planet for this Ra, this god. They're forbidden from reading and writing. No, they're not allowed to read and write whatsoever. They have to pay homage to this god, as he is their ruler. What we find out later on when they go back there is that this ruler, and it is alluded to in a flashback, is that it is a boy. That this ruler takes possession and takes the image of a boy. You're talking thousands of years ago, who, in order to appear human, in order to sort of convince the local inhabitants that they were a god, that they take on that form, but they are not. This Ra character is actually some sort of alien which is come from a dying planet and is looking for regeneration. So anyways, yeah, that's pretty much totally the entire movie there. But obviously, you get the sort of 90s comedy quips, you get your 90s action as well in there. It is an enjoyable film overall, to be honest with you, and I do like it. I really enjoy the idea, and that sort of idea of that, particularly Egyptology and ancient practices, ancient mythology. This film in particular leans on. There's a book which came out by an author called Eric von Daniken. The book was called Chariots of the Gods, and what this book really sort of tries to explain to people, it hypothesizes more so, I think, that the human race was a created race, that we were genetically engineered to be effectively slaves, or we were genetically engineered to be workers, and what we are, our current state is what we are. We aren't products of Darwinian evolution. We're not products of the Christian God, 10,000 years old and all that type of stuff. He does hypothesize, and now a lot of von Daniken's work has been totally discredited. It's easy to hypothesize without any evidence, and also a lot, I think, from what I understand, a lot of von Daniken's translations, shall we say, were skewed to favor his hypothesis rather than coming to a conclusion based on the translations that he had of ancient works. But nonetheless, it's quite an interesting idea. I mean, a lot of people do run with the idea, even to this day, in some way, shape, or form, that they think humanity is a genetically engineered creature that whether we were engineered for servitude or just for to see how we get on. We don't know. But anyways, that's really where the sort of the basis of the film comes from, is Von Daniken's Chariot of the Gods. If you're entertained, then pick up the book. I haven't read it myself. I probably won't read it. I'm more than familiar with the premise of it. But Stargate in itself as well, I found very interesting. No sequel to the film whatsoever. They were talking about having a reboot of this film. Now, I know that's in flavour. A lot of sort of franchises go through reboots, or how can I put it? Like soft reimaginings is probably the best way of putting it. Like Jurassic World continued the Jurassic Park franchise without actually sort of rebooting it entirely. So they could actually do the same thing here, but the difference is that a lot of particularly American audiences have been oversaturated with a lot of Stargate TV series over the last few years. I think it was about 3 or 4 different TV series which ran, all the way from 96 up until the last few years. So, effectively where you had the gap of where Star Trek was, and Star Trek: The Next Generation was a huge TV show in the 90s in the American audiences. It got continued on, and Stargate jumped on that bandwagon as well. So you've had an oversaturation of Stargate, but it would be interesting to see if they could go back and really generate another story from this. But I think this story in itself, that's why I like the film so much, is that it didn't oversaturate it with about 4 or 5 different sequels. The TV series does expand on the mythology, but it isn't a direct link between the movie. It just takes the inspiration of the movie, if you understand. But one thing, I like to have a look at conspiracies as well. But one of the more interesting things in regards to a Stargate or some sort of wormhole or portal, there are stories from, I believe it was the 1991 Iraq invasion, where they are whether they are for disinformation, or they are really there to sort of sow the seeds of doubt and sort of fantasy in people who read this type of work. But from what I've read, that they particularly in 2003 invasion of Iraq and the 91 invasion of Iraq, there's been stories alluding to the seizure of certain things from the Iraqi museum and from places in Iraq, in Iran, where similar things, Stargate type portals, where people were looking to see if they could actually take possession of these things. The things like this had actually been unearthed before, so we don't know what they were. Now, that's not to say I absolutely believe that. That is just to say these are stories that have come out. Now, I accept there's quite a lot of ancient technologies that are lost, that we don't know about. There's a lot of things today that we've only now been able to replicate that have been in place, hundreds of years before. There are certain technologies which have been lost to time, that were regularly talked about in centuries gone by. One example would be for, there were centuries in the Middle Ages where people would talk about Greek fire, a weapon that was used primarily by the Byzantines, and the Byzantines, which were the Eastern Roman Empire, located out of Greece, Turkey, and that area, where they would use a flammable source, which they would actually shoot from, whether it would be their own ships, or it would be used against attackers at what's the city called, Constantinople, or any of their sort of strongholds, is regularly referred to in the Middle Ages. Now, there's been a lot of hypothesis about what that Greek fire was. Was it petrol? Was it some form of oil? Was it a flammable that was another sort of engineered flammable liquid that we just haven't come across, or maybe we have created again, but we just inadvertently didn't know that was what Greek fire was. Anyways, it is a technology that was never written down. It was a guarded secret then, and it's lost to time. So things like that do happen. And but to get back to the story with the Iraqi museum, now this has been a lot of US military personnel who went into the 2003 invasion specifically said that the sort of the key areas after the shock and awe invasion of Baghdad was that not only were they to take the key centres within the city, i.e. Saddam's palaces, to take military barracks, take command of the telecommunications within the country as well, just to ensure that everything still ran, or they ran according to the Allied NATO forces, how they wanted it to. A lot of people have said that they were sent to the Iraqi Museum or to the National Bank of Iraq as well. Some people veer off on a tangent and say we were there because we had a Stargate. Some people just say, listen, I don't know, but they were taking possession of objects from this specific place as well. So we don't know, but it's interesting to hypothesize anyways. But anyways, just to have a look at the movie itself, that's a really cool poster, so I've used a version of that in the thumbnail for the video as well. Stargate, if you wanted to go and watch it, it's actually on Prime Video at the moment if you want to go and rent that. If you've got a Prime account, brilliant, just go and watch that whenever you can. It's well worth it. It's 2 hours long. It does still have a pretty good review actually on IMDb, 7.1 out of 10, which is not bad considering for a 90s cheesy sci-fi movie. That's pretty good, and a lot of the actors who actually signed up for it, like James Spader, thought it was a piece of crap really before they were signing up. Like I said, there was one actor, which was Jay Davidson, who played Ra, the sort of malevolent alien overlord of this planet, which was using the mind element to power the vehicle and restore their youthfulness. His character was he was famous for being a Best Supporting Actor nominee in 1992 for The Crying Game, and then after this movie came out, I mean, he'd made a ludicrous request for money to sign on to this, but because he was the hot flavour of Hollywood at the time, they actually gave in to his demands. He hated it so much that all the costuming, all the time preparation, the location, everything to do with the movie business, as soon as the film was over and production had wrapped, he never did another movie until I think the 2000s, and I think from what I understand he just dropped off the map really. So yeah, unfortunately that just it happens sometimes. People just don't want to do that. That's fair enough. But he was brilliant in this film as well as James Spader is a really interesting actor in this as well. So yeah, so overall a pretty good review, a pretty good rating, 7.1. And you have a little look here. How much money did it make? Let's have a little look. See, does it say? So let's go and have a look. The original film, so 1994. Stargate was a budget of 55 million and it made just shy of 200 million, which is a fantastic return really for the 90s. I actually remember that typical 90s movies, they always had sort of like a soundtrack and a toy movie line. In particular, this film had a toy movie line, so remember I actually had some of the toys. And it is very 90s sort of, promote the toys, promote this, promote that, but it is fantastic. I really enjoy the film, and I would really recommend that everyone go watch that. Any other film recommendations I could say for this? I would probably look at, if you want to look at movies with a very questionable and a provoking sort of topic, I would say Prometheus is another one, which is based in the Alien franchise by Ridley Scott and James Cameron. That's very interesting. Similar theme about we were created by a sort of humanoid alien species that seeded planet Earth and then left, whereas this one is for slavery or for servitude. You've got a lot of different. You've got the Stargate TV series. You've got Star Trek as well. I wouldn't say so much say Star Wars. It's not. That's a totally different entity in itself. But the one I would say would be closest to this would be Prometheus for me. I do enjoy Prometheus, even though at the time it was a bit of a disappointment. But again, I'd say to check that one out as well. But with Stargate overall, yeah, it's really I rewatched it recently and it still holds up to date. It is still typical 90s, but it is pretty good. And overall, I'm going to be very generous. I'm going to give it a 3.5 stars out of 5. Normally I would have given it a 3, but I enjoy the film quite a lot, and it has got a reasonable IMDb rating. Probably not the favourites of the critics at the time, nor now, but people enjoy it, and the success that the actual franchise has had as well really just speaks volumes for what people think of the concept, which came with the original movie as well. So so overall, I mean, I hope you enjoyed the video. I hope you check out the film as well. It is a very good film, and let me know what you thought of it as well if you've gone and watched it. If you want to come back, I'm going to be doing a few more reviews. So if you can like the video, share or subscribe to the channel, I'd much appreciate it. And drop me a comment just to let me know what you thought of the movie, okay? Many thanks.